Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc are forming a team with Ferrari, despite the odd-year curse continuing to make its presence felt. By a strange twist of fate, the Maranello cars built in 2021, 2023, and 2025 have failed to live up to expectations. While the SF21 marked a clear step forward compared to the unfortunate car from the previous year, in both 2023 and this year the ambitions at the start of the Formula One season were high. It is clear that the SF25 needs significant interventions just to get back on track. It's inaccurate to speak of evolutionary or corrective updates, even if they are expected to be introduced in the coming rounds of the 2025 Formula One season. The Italian engineers are effectively forced to create a sort of B version of the technical project 677, which under the constraints of the budget cap is an extremely complex challenge. The life cycle of the SF25 and the management of the 2026 F1 technical project are being completely reassessed in terms of resource allocation. The effort being made proves that 2025 was never intended as a transitional year ahead of the new regulatory framework. It is equally clear that the release of the most significant aerodynamic updates has nothing to do with the introduction of Technical Directive TD018. At first, it was thought that the aerodynamic updates for the Ferrari SF25 would be introduced at the Imola Grand Prix. Then the decision was made to wait until the stricter front-wing deflection tests came into effect. But in reality, the extent of the modifications to Charles Leclerc's and Lewis Hamilton's car requires time, precisely because these are not simple updates. 6 Grands Prix out of 24 are already behind us, namely 25% of the season. In this span of time, Ferrari hasn't managed to limit the damage due to well-known technical issues and unforgivable lapses, such as the double disqualification at the Chinese Grand Prix. The Ferrari drivers understood as early as the Bahrain pre-season testing session that the season was heading in a very different direction from what they had hoped for. The championship was set as a target already at the launch of this year's car. For both drivers, it has been a disappointment that is difficult to digest for various reasons. Charles Leclerc, despite having developed strong immunity over his long stint at Ferrari, now seems resigned. Lewis Hamilton was looking for that spark at Ferrari in order to reignite the speed that had so often been stifled by the lack of competitiveness of the ground-effect silver arrows. After just 6 race weekends, despite small satisfactions in the sprint races, he is facing the same difficulties seen in recent seasons. What's making this early part of his adventure in red even more complicated is his clear dissatisfaction with the work done by his Maranello engineers at the track. There hasn't been a single round where the 7-time Formula One world champion's performance improved over the course of the weekend. At Ferrari, seniority and titles don't count. Serving the team is what matters. Caring deeply about the fate of the prancing horse, it's naturally our hope that the rest of the season can bring great satisfaction to the Italian team. However, we must consider the objective data and base our assessments on rationality. At this moment, thinking that the historic Maranello-based team can overturn the current balance of power is an act of faith. Most likely, Ferrari's drivers will need to set aside their early season ambitions and roll up their sleeves in service of the greater good, the team's interests. The pathetic string of team radios between the pit wall and the drivers in the second half of the Miami Grand Prix is exactly what must never happen again. Individual ambitions need to be shelved, especially when the fight is for minor positions. In this regard, Ferrari's driver pairing will need to prove capable of working in harmony, as Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz did in 2021 and 2023. Yes, because although there were frictions between the Monegasque and the Spaniard in those years as well, the two were able to maximize results with the material at hand and contribute to the car's performance growth. After all, the teams Carlos Sainz has raced for have always grown significantly after his arrival. That's a fact. Aware of the typical egotism of top-tier drivers, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton will have to put themselves at the team's service, at least until the car is worthy of its drivers and allows them to squabble over something far more prestigious than a 7th place, as was the case in the last round of the championship. When asked specifically about the British driver, Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur has pointed to the extremely narrow operating window of the 2025 Formula One tires as a key factor behind Lewis Hamilton's inconsistent performances since joining the Italian side. While the 7-time Formula One world champion has shown flashes of promise, particularly in sprint races, his Grand Prix results have been notably erratic throughout the early phase of the season. Lewis Hamilton's start to life in red has been marked by mixed results. Although he secured 2 third-place finishes in sprint races, these moments of success have been overshadowed by underwhelming outcomes in his 6 Grand Prix outings. One of the most challenging moments came during last month's demanding triple header, which concluded with a difficult race in Saudi Arabia. There, Lewis Hamilton finished a sobering 30 seconds behind teammate Charles Leclerc, a result that reportedly led him to describe the season as potentially painful. Despite those early setbacks, Hamilton delivered a stronger performance in Miami, capitalizing on changing conditions and a smart strategic call to secure another 3rd place in the sprint. However, qualifying once again proved problematic, as he was eliminated in Q2 while Charles Leclerc advanced further. Nevertheless, during the race itself, Lewis Hamilton displayed competitive pace that closely matched his teammates, suggesting a better understanding of the SF25. Fred Vasseur, however, downplayed suggestions that Miami marked a breakthrough. Speaking to the media, the Ferrari boss stated that Lewis Hamilton's pace had not drastically changed compared to previous events. The Frenchman argued that recent difficulties were primarily due to circumstantial factors rather than a lack of performance. He referenced Bahrain as an example, noting that Lewis Hamilton had initially matched Leclerc's pace early in the weekend. A track limits infringement during the first lap of Q3, however, forced Lewis Hamilton to start further back on the grid, compromising his entire race. According to the Ferrari team principal, had the grid positions been reversed, with Leclerc starting from 10th and Hamilton from the top 4, the performance gap would have looked similar. Frederick Vasseur went on to stress how delicate tire management has become in the current era, citing the example of Lando Norris, who lost several tenths in a single sector due to a minor error in Bahrain. He explained that operating the tires within their narrow optimal window has become increasingly difficult and that McLaren had excelled in this area across the season. Once a driver falls outside that ideal range, it becomes significantly harder to recover. In Fred Vasseur's view, Lewis Hamilton's work at the Miami International Autodrome in Florida was not fundamentally different from previous weekends. The Frenchman emphasized that Lewis Hamilton's pace in Bahrain had been solid, and that recent results were more a reflection of fine margins and compromised grid positions than any major drop in performance. Hamilton, for his part, expressed optimism after the Miami weekend. While acknowledging that Ferrari still isn't performing at the level the team desires, the British driver noted that he had a more complete weekend overall. He felt that, although the final race result didn't fully reflect his progress, particularly after starting 12th on a circuit where overtaking is notoriously difficult, there were clear signs of improvement. Lewis Hamilton reported that once he switched to the medium tire compound, he felt the car come alive beneath him. This renewed confidence in the SF25 left him feeling positive and encouraged about the direction of development. Despite the challenges, the Briton has maintained that Ferrari's true potential is yet to be fully unlocked. As the team continues to adapt to the demands of the 2025 Formula One season and works to extract consistent performance from the car and tires, both Fred Vasseur and Lewis Hamilton appear aligned in their belief that results can improve with patience and precision.